Since the events at the Capitol, there have been many reports about threats to lawmakers in D.C., reports of massive protests being planned all over the country, and protests planned on the 17th and the 20th. I've not actually seen any activist organizing or any statements from Trump supporters supporting any of these events, but I have heard some murmuring in local areas from people who say they're hearing these things. It could just be rumors from the mainstream media. We know that they reported there was supposed to be some big protest at Twitter headquarters that no one showed up to. And many Trump supporters have denied that these are actual events. In fact, over at the Donald.win, they say these are not real protests. No one is planning on going to these things. But regardless, the mainstream media is saying there are plans for something to happen. According to several reports, the FBI is warning that armed Trump supporters will protest in the Capitol. And thus, we are seeing photos, many photos of National Guard currently sleeping and just basically waiting and chilling out in the Capitol building, leading many people to be worried about what might happen during Joe Biden's inauguration. I got to say this. I'm eternally grateful to those who are serving the United States Armed Forces, be it National Guard or otherwise, to defend our Capitol. And I think we need to, redouble our efforts and make sure that we have a seamless, peaceful transition for what we can salvage. Nobody wants violence. We don't want violence. And that's the big news. Though Donald Trump has been censored and banned across the board, he has still issued a statement. Fox News reporting that Trump has called for a peaceful transition and no violence to all his supporters. This can't happen. And I agree, and I'm glad that he's done this. And I hope that we just have a smooth and calm next week or so. And listen, a lot of people have said it. Those that went to the Capitol thinking that somehow being physically in a building was in any way politically advantageous were just wrong, confused, and many believed fringe conspiracy theories. The left is claiming that Donald Trump incited the insurrection. And while I can certainly say it seems Trump has been irresponsible in his statements as the riots were going on, he did say peacefully march. So did Alex Jones and many others. So to these people who stormed the Capitol, going against what Trump had actually called for, I'm sorry. I think they lost it. I mean, hearing these people think that what they were doing would make Trump happy when it actually ended the objection process for many of the politicians. That's what Trump wanted. He said, we're going to cheer on politicians. Well, because these people, seem to have heard murmurings in Trump's language, secret dog whistles, they've actually hurt the president and his legitimacy. So it's no surprise at all for me to see that Trump is calling out and saying that his supporters must help ensure a peaceful transition and calling for no violence. I'm not surprised, but there's still some expectations as to what may happen, because going back to what I was saying about the people who decided to storm the Capitol anyway, even though the president said peaceful, I think there are people who aren't as concerned with Trump. Look, there are people who are Trump supporters first. They came to Trump's event in D.C., they heard him speak, and they left. Many of these people are being investigated and punished just for that. And there are people who defied the president and stormed the Capitol anyway while he was still speaking. These are people that I think are Trump supporters second, meaning they're more concerned about physically occupying a building or some kind of revolution than they are about what Trump actually wanted in this country. Because you have Antifa, you have fringe far-right elements, you have people who are more concerned about their political ideologies and what they want than what their movement or the collective or even this country needs. The way I see it, storming the Capitol was completely in defiance of basically everyone. Most people in this country do not want the chaos. And we can clearly see they don't have very much support at all. I mean, there are people posting on, some social networks defending them. But for the most part, everybody has said no to these people. Some of Trump's most ardent supporters are shocked by what we saw. Well, let's take a look at what Donald Trump said and what we can expect from this next week or so. But we also have some really big news. Gab has restored the entirety of Trump's Twitter account. We'll see if Trump actually uses it, because while it's available for him, Trump still issued his statement through Fox News. But before we get started, head over to timcast.com and become a member. Becoming a member means you give a monthly contribution to help support my work and my podcasts. Ladies and gentlemen, we are in trying times and people are getting purged left and right. I'm seeing people booted off YouTube. I'm seeing people booted off Twitter and Facebook because there's real serious fears now from these big tech companies they'll lose advertisers. So they're just getting ban happy. It's better late than never. But if you go to timcast.com, you can become a member. I apologize. We're still working out some bugs. Many people have said if they signed up, they didn't get their notifications. Just try logging in and request your password or try and change it. And we'll work through these. We're going to have members only content coming up with our guests from the Timcast IRL podcast. So you can support this channel over at timcast.com. But don't forget to like, subscribe, share, hit that notification bell. Let's read from Fox News. Trump calls on Americans, big tech, to help ensure peaceful transition. No violence. Trump's statement comes as House debates impeachment days before Biden inauguration. They say exclusive. Trump on Wednesday is calling for all Americans to help ease tensions and calm tempers, saying he does not stand for violence of any kind. And he's asking big tech to join the effort. Quote, in light of reports of more demonstrations, I urge that there must be no violence, no law breaking, and no vandalism of any kind. The president said in a statement to Fox News, that is not what I stand for, and it is not what America stands for. I call on all Americans to help ease tensions and calm tempers. Thank you. Bravo. I'm glad to hear it. Better late than never, as I stated for my own website. I wish Trump came out and gave a better statement while this was going on. I understand that many people were storming the Capitol while he was still speaking. But while the riot was going on, he was saying, Mike Pence has failed to, protect this country or do his duty or whatever. And it's just inappropriate. Look, I'm not going to pretend that Trump told people to do anything. That's crazy. But it's no surprise that while you have Trump supporters who believed that Trump was dog whistling them to storm the Capitol, you have leftists who believe Trump was dog whistling them to storm the Capitol. And all regular people were just like, the president said peacefully marched, taking him at his word and showing up and hearing him and supporting him. And that was it. We gotta let this simmer down. So good on the president for calling for this. And I'll say right now, too, tensions have been way too hot, man. Look, I understand everybody's on edge and they're tired and they point the blame. And the way I've seen it over and over again is, look, we had the Black Lives Matter riots all throughout this year and the left was defending it and defending these people. And I'm angry. I'm angry that now they have the nerve to come out and say, yeah, well, you did this. And it's like, well, what about what you did? And they'll say, oh, but that's whataboutism. I don't care. The left was urging on this kind of behavior. So it's no surprise that people felt it was the only opportunity. And therein lies the problem. Exactly why I criticized the left. My criticism of them stands. But don't think just because you're responding to it, you get a free pass. You can't do the same things they're doing and think someone of principle will be like, well, I guess it's okay now. No, it's not okay. Storming the Capitol was far from okay. I mean, in many ways, in most ways, it was way worse. Our constitutional process was underway. The objections were happening. And then people shut it all down. And it was just stupid. It just really, really was bad. I've seen the Proud Boys going around and burning a Black Lives Matter banner. Not a fan of that either. I don't care. I don't want any of it. And no one else in this country should either. Donald Trump has now issued this statement. So to all of the people who are true Trump supporters, you need to listen and need to calm down. And my personal recommendation is these demonstrations this next week, not the answer. I said this a month and a half ago. Mike Cernovich said it. Now's the time to go home, be with your family, and make money. I understand not everybody can. I understand the COVID lockdowns have made people, put people on edge. But now's the time to become self-reliant, to become independent, figure out what you can do. The best strategy forward is peaceful. It is persuasive, and it is resourceful. It's not easy. Not everybody knows the answers. But what we saw with the Black Lives Matter riots is no justification for anything we see after that. And what we saw in D.C. was absolutely detrimental to the right populist movement. We're going to sit down. We're going to have a conversation. And I'm going to criticize the left for refusing to accept calls for unity, especially when the last thing I want is to give a free pass for all the riots we saw throughout this year in the defense of Antifa. By the way, Antifa is still out protesting. But at least you can take the high road. Now, look. After they announced Joe Biden win, we saw people like Alyssa Milano and other leftists calling for unity and offering an olive branch. And maybe it would have been appropriate to just say, fine. The problem is, if you give an inch, they take a mile. And so nobody wants to back down. Nobody wants to give up on what they believe in. But I tell you, there are better paths forward. Like I said, persuasion and resourcefulness, not what we saw at the Capitol. I'm not going to pretend to have all the answers, but I don't think satisfying an emotional itch is going to solve the problem. It only makes it worse. When Antifa gets mad at the police and they go out and they cause violence, they lose support. And I've shown you the polls before. Black Lives Matter lost tremendous 17 percentage points in net support because of the riots. It lowered their support year over year. It doesn't work. Persuasion. They're going to say, a Trump advisor told Fox News the statement will go out as an email from the White House press office. The White House will then attempt to post the statement to all of Trump's official social media accounts. Attempt to. Maybe they'll let Trump back on for this reason. The advisor also told Fox News the statement would be posted and distributed through all Trump campaign and political accounts. President Trump is asking all Americans to join with him in ensuring that there is an orderly and peaceful transition next week, a senior Trump advisor told Fox News. President Trump is also asking that big tech companies join with him in this effort. The advisor added, "This is a critical time in our nation's history, and surely we can all come together to deliver this important message and not continue to play partisan politics." I know the people on the left are saying, how dare you? They're saying only after these people storm the Capitol will you call for unity? By all means, sure, criticize it. But please, at this point, everybody accept the olive branch. I am frustrated with Cuomo. I am frustrated with Alyssa Milano. I am frustrated with these personalities who have defended this behavior. But I'm more than happy to say, if we do not accept, we all must stop. It will only get worse. And that is bad for everybody, man. It's bad enough with COVID. It's bad enough. Hey, look, Cuomo came out and said he wants to reopen the economy. Take it. Vote him out next. Destabilization and collapse is not going to make things better for anybody. If you think COVID lockdowns are bad, if you think the economy being destroyed is bad, I can understand your anger. But trust me when I say escalation is worse. It's way worse. So hopefully people will heed Trump's statement. And most importantly, fine, the left can mock and belittle and ignore him. But this statement from Trump needs to be heard by his supporters, by those who were in the Capitol claiming that Trump would be happy he was doing it. Well, he's asked you not to. Please listen to the man. The president's statement came as the House was debating an article of impeachment against him, saying he incited insurrection, and days after he was permanently suspended from Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. The statement also came just a day after his first public appearance since last week's Capitol riot, telling reporters he wanted no violence. They go on to mention context about the riot we all understand. Well, take a look at some of these photos. Thousands of National Guard troops stationed in Capitol due to high threat level. And I believe there's a high threat level. The murmurings I've heard at the local level are people really are scared that there's going to be armed groups that want to go to the Capitol. That's a serious mistake. It is something you will not win. So the president, good on him for issuing this statement. And now is the time for regrouping and strategy. And it's a great opportunity. Listen, man, I've been through George W. Bush and Barack Obama. And it was my entire life looking at presidents who were awful, committing war crimes. And I have seen the rage from the left demanding revolution and nothing less. And I get it. But that doesn't work. And then they say Tim's a stupid liberal reformist. Sure. Now is the opportunity more than ever. The GOP is weakened and fractured. It is an opportunity for those on the right, conservatives and populists, to do something different and form a new party, or at least kick out the old leadership and bring in new personalities, charismatic personalities who can stand tall and deliver for the American people. It is a tremendous opportunity. As Republicans announce they're going to vote to impeach Trump, we'll see how that all plays out. The GOP is in trouble. Donald Trump was the man making all that money, bringing in those donations. Well, the torch can be handed off to a better man. Donald Trump may have been the perfect avatar for many people, but he was far from the actual perfect avatar of right populism and conservative values. Far from it. Now's a chance for someone to be moderate, reasonable, rational, and persuasive and resourceful, and actually help unite the country around ideals that the American people might actually want. Donald Trump said a lot the American people wanted. That's why he won. Hillary Clinton wasn't the personality. Well, now people are saying they don't want him. And Donald Trump is asking everyone to keep it peaceful and go through that, have that transition. Don't forget, the Republicans won in the House levels, which means 2022, there should be a turnaround. Now, I'll tell you this. I think Republicans are going to become much more moderate and left-leaning because the media. Now's the time for strategy. Look at what Ben Shapiro and the Daily Wire are doing. Making a movie. A good one, actually. I hear from people who have seen it. It's not the greatest movie in the world, but it's pretty good. It's intense. Well made, well acted, well produced, and surprisingly good for conservative production. That's what you need to be doing. So I'll tell you what my focus has been I want to focus more on the Timcast IRL podcast because we're going to have conversations in pop culture and UFOs as well as politics so that people can get a well-rounded sense of the world. And we want to do vlogs and venues and comedy. We have this venue set up, we're setting up, and we want to do events, set up membership, and create and inspire. Because right now, the strategy for victory is about persuasion and resource, not violence. And Trump knows it. And I think that's why Trump is coming out and saying this. It is not good for him what happened. Now, there are concerns. BBC reports that Trump supporters are planning armed protests ahead of Biden inauguration. FBI warns. I don't think these are your actual regular Trump supporters. I've seen the regular Trump supporters. If you look at the amount of people who stormed the Capitol, you had hundreds of thousands of people, according to numerous reporters I've talked to, and they mostly just listened to what Trump had to say. On the Capitol building, it looks like there was maybe over 1,000, but in the building, several hundred. That does not represent the hundreds of thousands of people who waved little American flags and then went home. So these people, whatever they're planning, some of them may claim to be Trump supporters, but if you really are a Trump supporter, well, Trump has made the call. No violence and peaceful transition because it's the smart thing to do. And it's also the moral thing to do. Now, when we hear about these protests, I want to stress this. The Verge reports only one person showed up to the pro-Trump protest outside Twitter's San Francisco HQ. 30 officers were there to monitor the scene. And here is a woman, and she's holding a sign that says, I believe it says F. Jack Dorsey. One person showed up. Trump supporters had been posting on forums that there was no protest planned. They did not organize anything, and they didn't organize any of these upcoming protests either. There were also statements from some of Trump's most ardent supporters. They were kind of angry with the storming of the Capitol because they said the president said go home and in peace and called for a peaceful march. And they were like, why would we allow anyone to defy the man that we supposedly support? If you were a Trump supporter, I saw these statements and I was like spot on, like on point and principled. They were saying Trump said peacefully march. So who are these other people who are defying the president and claiming they supported the guy? I think these people were Trump supporters second. They're also pointing out, look, one person showed up to this protest because there wasn't one. The media is desperate to milk all of the Trump stuff, all of the MAGA stuff. So here's what you need to understand. Trump is on the way out. Biden is set to be inaugurated on the 20th. There needs to be peace. The president has said it. We get it. But the media is getting scared. We're already seeing journalists say, I don't know what I'll do now. There's one prominent journalist with hundreds of thousands of followers who was saying their whole beat was criticizing Trump and calling out his tweets. And this is like from a big newspaper. And now they're like, I don't know what I'll do without Trump. Jim Acosta has been removed from the White House. And now they've put him on some other beat because the yelling at Trump beat is over. Jeff Zucker of CNN has announced CNN Airport is coming to an end. That's where they get most of their viewership. CNN is hurting. The reporters are panicked. So they're going to do everything in their power to overhype all of this. How much do you want to bet they're not going to report Trump calls for peace? I wouldn't be surprised. But he did. No, the media needs there to be a boogeyman to write about. And so there's concern following, Trump's departure. They will just focus on Trumpism and they'll go after all the people who helped enable Trump or whatever. Maybe. The culture war may come back. Or maybe things will change. Maybe there's no more normal. I don't know. There are concerns that the economy, it's way worse than anyone realizes. And I hope that's not the case. I hope things are actually improving, but I just don't know. We've never seen the mass printing of money like this. And I say printing, it's more like digitally pressing enter on a keyboard. They're just pumping out money. And I believe we're at like 66% of the money supply was created in the last 9 months. 66%. The debt to GDP is at 130%. It's bad, man. And I got to say, I'm already hearing that hyperinflation is hitting. Imported goods are starting to become more and more expensive. So we're doing some IT work trying to get our internet. As you've known, the internet saga has been an arduous journey for us because we're in the middle of nowhere and it's really expensive internet. Let me tell you, if you want to get a good internet line for running a studio and you're in the middle of nowhere, I was just shocked to see the first bill, and it is substantially more expensive than home consumer internet. So, yikes. Anyway, I'm talking to the IT guys that we've brought in, and they're just saying computer goods are getting more and more expensive. What you need to understand about hyperinflation, say increasing the minimum wage, is that it will make it so imported goods are more expensive to buy. So internally, if I trade with you, let's say you got an apple, I'm like, here's $1, I'll give you $1 for the apple. The dollar is pretty much equal value to both of us because we know the value of that dollar. But for international exchange, you have to trade the dollar for the local currencies, and that's where the imbalance starts to come in. So already looking at computer components, they're going up, property values are going up, and I'm worried about what this really means moving forward. I think we're at a point where we need people to be more resilient, more self-reliant, and now's the time to meditate, to study, to learn survival skills, not because the world's ending, because you need to be a better and well-rounded person. It's really scary to me because of the shutdown of all these gyms in the COVID lockdown that we're hearing stories of people deteriorating. Exercise to the best of your ability. Look, man, I don't want to equate the COVID lockdowns with prison or anything like that, but kind of what happens to people who go to prison? They work out. They get in shape. It's like, what else are you going to do? I guess that's something we should all be considering right now, bettering ourselves to the best of our abilities. Also, get offline and read some books. No, for real. Just turn off social media for every so often and read a book and take some time. We need the economy to be reopened. I'm glad to see some Democrats finally coming around. Better late than never, as I've been saying. I will take it. Let's argue our politics. Let's be persuasive. And let's win over the hearts and minds of the people to actually make the changes we want to see. D.C. has an expanded special security designation, and there are concerns about what's coming. But I hope they do more. I do. I'm idealistically libertarian, but I am realistically liberal. Of course, the left tribe doesn't want to admit that I'm a liberal, even though, literally am. And I think that there has to be some security and some authority. I'm not an absolutist saying, get rid of the police, get rid of the government. No, I think we need security for our nation's capital more than ever. And so this is something I'm glad to see. The last thing we want, jackboot, Gestapo, militarized police who don't care about the people marching around, shutting things down, authoritarianism. And so you prevent that sometimes in counterintuitive ways. If there is an armed protest at the Capitol, it will result in a war on terror style crackdown on civil liberties, many of which we've never recovered in the first place. We still have these people who lied to Congress about mass surveillance, and we want accountability. There are people upset. They feel like they're not getting accountability. I understand that. But again, it's about persuasion. The Daily Beast published an article, and the Daily Beast is left-leaning, where they said, we do not want another war on terror. And there have been finally people on the left coming out criticizing the us or them rhetoric, realizing you do not want to empower the state. Oh, they were all about it to get rid of Trump. Fine. And now they're worried about what it means. Well, that's a good thing. My concerns are that the Democrats now have the House, the Senate, the executive branch. I don't think they'll pack the courts at this point because I think Manchin would block it. And I don't think Republicans would allow it either. So it probably would falter, but they still control 2 of the 3 branches, which means they're going to start passing a lot. It means that they can actually make some moves in terms of taxes and budgets, and we're likely to see some more gun control. I want everyone to calm down, and I hope we can. And I understand the severity of what we're seeing and the anger from both sides and the threats and, all that stuff. But we need to navigate this path in a way that doesn't result in destruction. So that's where, I'm glad to see Trump's statement finally coming out. Airbnb is going to be canceling and blocking all D.C. reservations during Biden's inauguration, during inauguration week, amid fears of MAGA unrest. People still might come out. They'll still blame Trump. They'll still blame Trump supporters, which is why Trump's message is more important than ever. There's going to be more censorship. This will hurt conservatives in the long run. There needs to be alternative platforms, places where people can go, more resilient platforms. There needs to be reasonable dialogue between factions. Now, I get it. I do an interview show, and it is difficult to get leftists on the show. No joke. We spent like 40 minutes yesterday on the IRL podcast ragging on Donald Trump and his foreign policy. And we haven't had one Trump supporter comment that Trump was the greatest president of our lives and he should be charged with war crimes. And we laugh because it's kind of like, wow, we've had bad presidents, right? And so there are things that Trump has done that people are critical of. And we had that conversation and people respected the conversation. And it was interesting. Why? I think most people are more concerned about freedom and liberty and don't like war. The last thing we need now is a dramatic escalation of censorship and tensions. And that's where I'm worried. But there's something interesting happening. Take a look at Gab.com. Gab has archived and reproduced Donald Trump's Twitter account almost in full. And when I mean by almost, I mean like 99.9% of Trump's Twitter account is still in existence. This is extremely important for two big reasons. One, Donald Trump's statements are historical record. He was president. He still is. But he, as a president of the United States, we need to see these statements. People need to know what he said, when he said it, and why he said it. And more importantly, this is good because it shows that Gab has become resilient and is protected against the mass monopolistic powers of Silicon Valley. It's a light at the end of the tunnel. Now, of course, Gab's been maligned as white nationalist and all right and all that evil stuff. I don't care. You can call them whatever they want. I don't know the politics of the founder of Gab or what he's really concerned about. I can just tell you, I believe in free expression, freedom, liberty, the Constitution, individual rights. And the only way we prosper is through decentralized politics. Too much power is being centralized in Silicon Valley and in Washington, D.C. We need to decentralize this. Gab is doing it, taking away some of that monopolistic power. It's a good thing. In D.C., we will see. I think now is the opportunity for Trump supporters to have their moment and say goodbye to the crony establishment Republicans and stop voting for them. There's one thing I can say, though. Mitch McConnell appears to block the impeachment. So I also think this is good. He's not going to reconvene the Senate, so there will not be a trial. If there is a trial, it likely will happen after Trump is already out of office. It's at that point that I will say Trump has just taken the steps to call on everyone. Sure, you can say he should have called on his supporters, he said all Americans, for peace and nonviolence and a peaceful transition. The next step is for Democrats to say, we're going to let sleeping dogs lie. Just let Trump go. He's already getting his banking, New York City severing ties with him. His banks are severing ties with him. It's going to hurt his business across the board. You do not need to inflame tensions anymore. Let's just let this slow down, calm down. And I hope everybody heeds the words, all of Trump's supporters, and just have a peaceful transition. That's what we need now. And then we'll get back to the politicking. But I do have concerns. Earlier today I did a segment on what happened with Lauren Boebert, and so I'm really concerned that the ideologies are too entrenched. I want peace. I want inspiration, and I want movements towards positive direction. So if you really want to protect the future, then here's what you got to do. Teach your kids to do better. I mean, have kids to a lot of people, and instill them with the values of respecting one another, constitutional rights and values, individual liberties, and create. Not hate, not destruction, creation. Write a book, write a story, draw a picture, make a comic, do a podcast. Film skateboarding or biking or skits or comedy, make jokes, inspire people to have fun and have a good time, and don't do it at the expense of others. We'll see how everything goes. By tonight, we should know if there's going to be an impeachment, which is probably going to happen. And then we'll just fingers crossed for peaceful transition. I'll leave it there. Next segment will be tonight at 8 p.m. live at youtube.com/TimCastIRL, where we do the live show every day. Thanks for hanging out, and I will see you all then.